It is September 15th, 2022. I'm Michelle Hirsch at the Pyle Center with Tempe City Councilman Randy Keating. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we like to start at the beginning, or your beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born in Lansing, Michigan at Sparrow Hospital, October 2nd, 1982. True story, my brother now is an ICU nurse at that same hospital.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah.
And it's almost your birthday, so
It
happy
is
birthday.
almost my 40th birthday, so let's not talk about it.
Milestone one.
Right.
What brought you to Tempe?
You know, I served some time in the Navy after 9/11.
Thank you.
And after that, I didn't have really anything to do. And my older brother, Pat, who worked as a concierge at Tempe Mission Palms, was like, come on to Tempe. So I did, and I slept on his couch at Hayden Square and never left.
And how much older is your brother, Pat?
He is, I say 10 years. Technically, it's 9.5, but I like to say 10.
And do you have any other siblings?
Yes, I have two other brothers, Matt and Todd. So
And-
it was a household of 4 boys.
Wow. What are they doing now?
Matt works in insurance, and Todd is an ICU nurse. Pat, my older brother, yes.
Mm-hmm.
He is like director of admissions at Grand Canyon University.
Oh, okay. And can you tell us a little bit about your parents?
Sure.
Where were they from, and what are their names?
They're both from they're both from Lansing, Michigan. Their names are Mike and Trudy Keating. They both still live in Lansing, Michigan, and they met at a McDonald's. Well, they both worked, and Jesus, must have been the 70s. I don't know, probably. Well, it had to be because I was born in '82. So, and it's still the closest McDonald's to the house they live in today. And they lived all over Lansing, but now they're just somehow back there.
So they obviously still go back to that McDonald's.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do.
I just think that's charming.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Oh, fun. And how about your grandparents? Do you know where they were from, or?
My grandfather was from, it was a city in New York, upstate New York. It started with a C. My dad's gonna be mad at me. It wasn't Clovis, because that's a city in New Mexico. It was something along those lines. I know because he made us visit it once when we were like driving across the country.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, he was from upstate New York. My grandmother, I don't know. I know they met during World War II because he was in the Navy, and so was she. She was a nurse, and they met then. Unfortunately, she passed away before I was born of cancer, so I never got the opportunity to meet her. But her name was Maggie, and my grandfather's name was Joseph, and he passed away in 2004.
Now, mentioning that your grandfather was in the Navy, was that any influence on you to join the Navy, or what prompted you to do that?
Well, 9/11 played a big role. Obviously, I was 18 years old, and when something like that happens, the emotions kind of boil up to the top. And it wasn't necessarily that. I kind of wanted to see the world and do all that. I didn't get the opportunity to do that because I went to the medical field, so I worked at a naval hospital during my time there. So, yeah. So I'm going to say no. Would be the short answer to that.
And so, moving to Tempe when you were, what was that, right out of the Navy? So,
Yeah, I was 20 and a half, maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What did you maybe see here, or places that you went that either were favorite places or maybe aren't even here anymore?
I was shocked at, I don't know if you've ever been to mid-Michigan, but it's a much different vibe than we have here in Tempe. Tempe is a much younger crowd. It seemed there's so much more happening. The economy was good. It was easy to get a job when I moved here. It just seemed so refreshing and new and bright. Well, obviously bright. Michigan has cloud cover for 10 months a year, and Tempe has cloud cover maybe 10 days a year. So to me, it just seems like a whole new world. And I immediately fell in love with the city because I lived again at Hayden Square. So I'm going to lunch on Mill Avenue. I wasn't old enough to drink then, but it just, you fell in love with it. And back then, like, the lake had just been created only a couple of years
Tempe
prior.
Town Lake?
Yes. So when I moved here, the tallest building in the city was Manzanita.
Wow.
Which is crazy, right? That was only 20 years ago. So to think of how much Tempe has grown between then and now is pretty astounding.
And that's a great reference, because those of us that have been here since then may forget, but that was a tall building, and the tallest building at the time. Wow.
Yeah. And the lake was there, but nothing was along it yet. So look at it now. It's pretty wild to think about.
And did you have any favorite stores or restaurants that you went to on Mill Avenue that you recall, or?
I used to go to Long Juan's. So I worked, my first job in Arizona was a cyber cafe right next to where Long Juan's was. Now that's where the Westin is.
Yeah,
That hotel, which
is
I
an
love.
incredible
That's
place.
incredible. But back then, like the internet wasn't ubiquitous. So people would go to this place to get online and check their email, and they'll have coffee. And I was a barista there, so I didn't even drink coffee. So I would just make their drinks. I'm sure they were terrible because I don't drink them. But so yeah, then after my shift, I would always go over to Long Juan's and have chicken wings, because I'm a big chicken wing guy to this day, much to my doctor's chagrin. But it was just a very welcoming place, and I got to hear some local bands that later blew up and became big. And it was, again, relatively cheap for me, making very little money and being a struggling college student.
So you went to college at ASU
I did.
while you're working at the Cyber Cafe and hanging out with your brother, or at least on your brother's floor, or
At least on his couch, yeah.
And so what did you study at ASU?
Physics and astronomy. Well, I'm not that smart, but I will tell you why. It's because my brother had just met a woman the day before I moved here. So he was just all of his time with her. I don't know anybody in this state. So I was just bored all the time. So I'm looking, I wanted to be a lawyer. And so I'm looking through his bookshelf, looking for books to read. And I read A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. And I didn't understand any of it, right? Like I didn't get it at all, but I was so impressed that someone could understand this. And this is how we do science. This is how we think, this process, that I decided that's what I wanted to pursue as far as, education. Looking back, that book's actually rather novice, but to me, it kind of inspired me because I wanted to understand the realities arena. Why are things the way they are?
Interesting. And so as you're going to ASU, are you making more friends and expanding beyond your brother?
Yeah, I did. I joined a fraternity, which I actually regret now, looking back on it. It's just, I'm not close to those guys anymore, unfortunately. But
What was the fraternity?
Delta Sigma Phi,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all good dudes, but we just grow apart. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I was in Delta Sigma Phi. I lived the corner of University and Rural after my freshman year, and there was a lot of good experiences there. Look, I'm not going to say it wasn't a fun time, but it hasn't really shaped my life in the way that I had hoped that it would have at the time.
And so you graduated from ASU when?
I didn't graduate.
Oh, okay.
I dropped out. I started a marketing business.
And what did you? Were you just an entrepreneur? And you?
Yeah, well, essentially yes, because my father worked.
And I don't mean to say just. I mean,
No.
I meant
I don't,
to not work for another company.
Yeah. So my father worked for IBM my entire life. So I grew up with the pre-internet, the dial-up on Prodigy on a laptop that weighed 40 pounds. So I bought a book on HTML in 5th or 6th grade. I'm making websites now. I'm selling them to my buddies in high school. And, I was working at eJoy and kind of figuring out, like, I can make a lot more money, doing this. Because at the time, it was so new that people were charging an arm and a leg. And I could charge 1/10 of what you would get out of a big agency and still make what to me at the time was a lot of money. So I started doing that and did that for years and years and years, all the way up until I took office.
And so I want to talk about or ask you some questions about running for office, but that reminds me to ask, what were maybe some of your first jobs, even in high school? You weren't here in Tempe, but what, maybe was your first job, or what were you involved in high school?
So my first job ever was at a restaurant called the R Club, and that's in Lansing, Michigan, and I think it's still there. It was there at least last time. Well, it wasn't there. I didn't go by it last time I was in Michigan, which for my 20-year high school reunion, let's not talk about that. But I was there again for my brother's wedding in 2016, and it was still there. And what I did is I washed dishes, and it taught me a very valuable lesson, because up to that point, I was getting paid to do chores, right? Hey, you cut the lawn, I'll give you $10, or you clean out the garage and whatever. It was negotiable. Good luck getting my parents to pay, though. That's a whole nother story. So, my third or fourth day there, I kind of realized the dishes never stop coming. Like I've washed this pile, and they just keep coming in.
Yeah.
They just keep coming in, and that was actually rather stressful for me at the time. That this is this is what I'm going to do. Like, this is work. This is it. You know, for the rest of my life, you know, toiling away and the dishes, whatever, the websites, whatever, may never stop coming. But, you know, as you get older, you grow into that. You find that you like what you do, and it doesn't become work anymore. But I remember having this epiphany, being like, oh my God, these dishes are going to come forever. And they did. I worked there for, I think, like 2 years.
And did you work anywhere else in high school?
I did. So yeah, at the end, I think it was in between my junior and senior year, cell phones had become a new thing. So I was one of those guys in the mall trying to sell you a cell phone as you walk by. You know, do you want to buy a cell phone? A great plan. It's only X amount of money, and you know, the deal was terrible. Like, looking back now to what we have now, like, it was like, yeah, 3,000 minutes a month, and then you're paying a lot. 3,000 minutes doesn't sound like a long time, but it is. And so yeah, I was one of those guys, and that job was crazy because the technology was so new and so profitable. You know, I got paid $52 a phone that I sold, which to 17 years old was a fortune.
Yeah.
So I did that as well, all the way up until I left for the Navy, if I remember correctly.
And were you involved in any extracurricular, sports, clubs, any other activities in high school?
Yeah, I played hockey growing up for a long time. I was in the French club. I ran for French club president and lost. I was very unhappy about that, obviously. I declared myself French
They
club.
now know that you've won.
I don't know if the teacher knows that I won.
You
But
send him a message.
yeah, maybe I will. So yeah, I lost my first election. When you think about it like that.
So it is just an honor to have you here. Thank you for your service,
So
not
happy to be
only to the Navy, but to the city of Tempe. Let's hear about what inspired or prompted you to run for Tempe City Council, and that was it 2003? No.
I ran for city council. I started in 2015.
Okay,
City
15.
council. Yeah. So yeah, I'm happy to talk about that.
Yeah.
I grew up in a time, so I was actually able to vote in the 2000 election. And I voted for Al Gore. Of course, we all know that he won the election, maybe won. I'm not going to get into it, but I grew up in a political age of, under George W. Bush. And I, obviously disagreed with a lot that was going on. So I was certainly very inspired by what then was Senator Obama's campaign. And he kind of spoke to my soul with his rhetoric, as did many Americans. I mean, the man obviously is a genius orator. So it really kind of lit a fire under me. And then while that was shortly after he was elected, and at this time too, under the Obama campaign, I wasn't an active volunteer. I was talking to my friends, I was putting up signs, I'm arguing with people that I shouldn't be at, random restaurants and stuff. But I wasn't an active participant. But then I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in late June or early July of 2019. And because I was doing the freelance thing, I was not able to buy health insurance. Once I got the diabetes, I was like, all right, I'm trying to get, this is expensive, and they just wouldn't sell it to me. It wasn't a matter of it's too expensive, it's just like, no, you're good. So the Affordable Care Act debate is what really kind of prompted me in that I have real skin in this game at this point. It's not enough just to put my sign up and vote. I need to reach out to my neighbors in the community to, help influence this, because I was paying a lot of money that I didn't have. I was actually struggling quite a bit financially because of how much insulin cost. Back then, it wasn't nearly as expensive as it is now, so I couldn't imagine how you would do it these days. So once that finally passed, I looked up who my representative was. Did they vote for it? Where do I live in Tempe? And Harry Mitchell was my representative at the time, and he had voted for it. So the next day I showed up at his office and said, what can I do to help? And then, politics is one of those things that you show up, you work hard. It really doesn't matter what your background is, especially back then when we were, Democrats were the minority party in a deep red state. As long as you're able to put in the sweat equity, you can make a name for yourself. You can do what you wanted. And that's kind of the path I took. I went from volunteer to a precinct committee member, to party activist, to party leader, to consultant, to candidate, to council member, to vice mayor, now back to council member.
So it was 15, the first time you ran for Tempe City Council?
Yes, I think I announced my candidacy in June of 2015.
And so here you have some experience because you had worked in with Harry Mitchell and in as precinct committeeman, but to run a campaign, especially a local campaign for city council, you're going to have some help with the people that you've
Sure.
worked with, but sometimes those local elections are a lot of work on the candidate.
Oh, it was a ton. Yeah.
And so, what was that like campaigning your first time?
Campaigning your first time is a lot harder than your second time, and my third time hasn't come yet, and that's a decision I still have to make. But you don't have the benefit of knowing what's going on, especially in a nonpartisan race in a city, right? I'm not talking about guns. I'm not talking about abortion. I'm not talking about immigration. I'm talking about roads, parks, public safety, infrastructure. And that was kind of out of my element. So I would knock doors, and I remember the first door I ever knocked, my then girlfriend came with me at the time, and this woman just grilled me, and I had no idea what to say. I was just like, I don't know, like, and I kind of like, man, I thought this would be a lot easier than it is, But after a while, you start doing it, you start learning, this is what the city is doing, this is, hey, what are you doing about my street? It's been unpaved. Well, there actually is a plan to do the repavement. So it takes a while to kind of find your legs under that. The hardest part for me about campaigning, I'm not comfortable bragging. I'm not comfortable talking about myself and my accomplishments, and I'm not comfortable asking people to do something for me. Hey, vote for me, please. Put a yard sign in your yard. I need money too, by the way. Like, this is expensive. That, to this day, that is the hardest part for me in this job. So I look, if I'm going to run again, I'll have a re-election coming up in a year and a half, bounced, right? And I have to do that all over again. It's gotten a lot easier now because I can speak intelligently about what the city is doing. I can talk about every aspect of what the city is doing on every issue. But still, the idea of putting yourself out there and being like, I am putting myself out there for your judgment, and I'm asking you to do something for me. It's something that's never been easy, and I don't know anyone that is easy on.
Exactly. I don't think it is easy to ask for money, to ask even for votes. I mean, you know that you're going to do a good job, but to try to convince other people without your record, that to please vote for you, and over and over and over again, and many doors, and it's not easy. So
No.
I think that there are probably many people who think I'd like to serve, but they don't realize what the campaigning part of it is.
I think a lot of people who want to run for office and end up doing have no idea what it really entails.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you see people that are really excited to do it, and their campaigns kind of fall flat because you have got to have that fire in your belly. I will tell you this, the star power or whatever, even council at this level, wears off very quickly. So you have got to want to do something positive and to stick to it.
Now, the Honorable Harry Mitchell is certainly somebody you knew, and so did he give you any advice or strategies, or I'm sure he supported you, but
Yes,
just
he did.
in what ways maybe could he be helped during your not only campaign, but then after you won?
So Harry Mitchell did a lot for me. He very much said, this is who you need to talk to about this issue and this issue, and this stakeholders you need to talk to. And he gave me really good advice and stay out of the partisan fray. Like, that's not why you're running, right? That you may feel this way, a certain way about certain issues, but that's not what the city does. You're not going to save the world from the city of Tempe. What you are going to do is make Tempe incrementally better with every vote that you take. And I was still, this is when I was kind of kicking it around. I was still, I was nervous about it. I was like, man, it's hard, again, as we just discussed, it's hard to put yourself out there, and I don't know, like, can I win? Do I have the support? And he said, this was at Payway on Guadalupe and Clinton. And he said, Randy, someone's going to run and someone's going to win. Why shouldn't it be you? And that really kind of gave me, the courage to do it. So
Wow.
I think about that often.
Oh, that is awesome. We can get back to some of your service on council, but it's fun to talk about, since you've been in Tempe, some of the changes that have happened, whether it's culturally, economically, you mentioned a little bit with Tempe Town Lake, but and now you're a part of voting on things that are changes in Tempe. But what are some of the changes you've seen, not only since you've gotten here, but since you've been serving on council, which is how many years now? 6?
I'm just past 6 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just for reference, city council terms are 4 years?
4 years.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm in the middle of my second.
Yeah. And so what are some of the changes that you've seen, some good maybe, some, I mean, we want to be positive, but you
Sure.
can be honest, yeah.
Yeah, well, so Tempe is clearly a boomtown and has been for decades. And that started with, Harry Mitchell cleaning up downtown, Neil Giuliano damming the river to make the lake obviously contribute a tremendous amount to the current success of Tempe. I was unprepared for the amount of work around that. Right? We want to build this here, or we got to add a lane of traffic here. We have to add more police officers and firefighters here, only because so many people want to be here. Tempe is, well, it's either lucky or unlucky, depending on your perspective, to be surrounded by 5 major highways. We're so centrally located in this region that it seems to be a hub for arts and culture and economic development. So with that, of course, I used to say that this is a good problem to have. Right, that people want to be in Tempe. And so we've seen growing pains with that. We've seen struggles with affordable housing. We've seen struggles with homelessness. We've certainly seen a lot of struggles with traffic. And so I think it's a mix of the two. How do we continue to make sure that Tempe's time in the sun continues as long as it possibly can? And it won't forever. I mean, everything changes. But how do we do so in a way that we're being responsive to our residents and responsive to the needs of the city and the taxpayers of the city and just everyone that wants to be here? And everyone wants to be here. People talk to me about Tempe in such glowing ways. And people that don't live here, I visited Tempe, a couple of years ago, and that's just an amazing city, and the vibe, the culture. So we got to make sure that we do everything we can to maintain that, in my view, as long as we can, knowing that eventually that will shift somewhere else, but then we need to be situated for that ultimate reality as well.
What are some of the challenges that you've faced on council, and maybe some collaborations that you've worked on that have gotten you through those challenges?
Yeah, so the challenges are, well, if we're talking about like the makeup of the council and everything, look, you got 7 people who all made the decision to run for office, and they all won office. So you got 7 egos. It's funny, because I had a conversation with the city manager about a year ago. I said, I'm not really a competitive person. He's like, you kidding me? It's like, you ran for office, and like, you clearly are. And I think we're all kind of like that, One of the cool things I will say about my experience with all of my colleagues is, in my first term, the 2 people that you would suspect would be the furthest away from me, to be like, I'm not sure about this guy, let's kind of keep him at arm's length, were the 2 that really embraced me. Nice. And that was Councilmember Robin Hernando Savage and Councilmember Joe Navarro. We became good friends. And even though we don't agree, certainly me and Robin don't agree on very many issues, but to this day, I saw her yesterday at a Tempe Chamber event, fundraiser, and we just get along like you wouldn't believe, even if we disagree. And that really kind of helped me learn to disagree without being disagreeable. It was really a growing process for me.
Yeah, and she's a great example of someone to work with and learn that skill.
Agreed.
Of getting along with people even that you don't always agree with.
Yes.
And how blessed we are to have that on council, because there's certainly councils across the country that if you can't agree, then they can't even get things done. So.
I mean, there's councils in this region that are primarying each other. And, I'm not going to name any names. But, for the most part, I was very, very surprised. Well, not surprised, but pleased at how well everyone gets along with each other on the Tempe City Council, even when we don't like what each other might be trying to do with a certain policy.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes I feel a little awkward asking this question, but this is for posterity, know. So generations from now, how would you like your family and friends and descendants to remember you? What do you hold dear? What is important to you? And you hope other people realize that.
So a piece of political advice I got shortly after being elected. And my first year and a half, I was really struggling. I was the dog that caught the car. And I was like, I wanted this for a long time. Now I had it. It's hard. Like, this is way different. There's no onboarding, right? There's no manual you read. You're just down there voting. And you got your colleagues being like, I want this. You got residents saying, I want this. And you just, it's a lot, right? So I was really, I sought out an old friend, and she actually moved to Minnesota, last I knew. She was a state representative. Her name was Stephanie Mock. And I was just talking to her about, like, this is a struggle. Like, this is difficult. And like, I'm going to upset this person if I do this. I'm going to upset this person if I do this. And she said, yeah, maybe you will, but as long as they trust what you're saying to them, and as long as you're showing leadership, they'll look past that. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? Because you assume, like, if I take one vote that you don't like, I'm done forever. And some people are like that, certainly. But she said, there's a new political capital in this world, and it's not how many votes you got. It's not how much power you can wield. It's authenticity. If people trust that you are doing what you think is best, and you're communicating that and being real about it, they will be behind you. And that's how I've tried to govern, and that's how I've tried to live my life. Honestly, I'm an oversharer. If you catch me out somewhere and I'm having a bad day, I'll tell you why. Oh, Randy's going, well, I broke up with my girlfriend and I feel like crap. And, I've had residents say that to me privately too. Like, hey, I'm not sure if this hurts or helps. Like, I really like that you're so honest and forthright with me, but I'm not sure if that hurts or helps. And frankly, I'm not either. But, for posterity, I would like my friends and family and the residents of Tempe to know that I'm just doing what I think is best, and I'm being who I am, and there might come a day when they don't like that anymore and they show me the door, and that's okay too. But the gamesmanship and stuff like that, it's worn off on me. So yeah, you just got to be real, and I hope that my friends and family and the residents as well will ultimately see that if they don't already.
And so what else are you doing now besides council? I mean, most council members have another job.
Yeah, I work as a marketing manager for a company called Primus Pharmaceuticals, and a pharmaceutical company, right? It raises a lot of, I don't know. No, this is actually a very good company. They, all their products are very affordable, even if you don't have insurance, and they're meeting unmet needs in markets that we don't really deal in. So I can talk forever about what a great company that is, and I'm very proud to have worked there over 3 different times for 7.5 years.
Oh, excellent. Are they located in Tempe or locally, or?
They're located in Scottsdale. Believe me, I keep trying. Like, you guys want your office on the lake. This is prime real estate. But a lot of them live in Scottsdale, so they're not too receptive. Yeah, I'll be closer to my house. I want to be convenient for me.
Does faith or spirituality play any role in your life that you want to speak to?
I was raised Catholic, but I'm not a practicing Catholic anymore. As far as spirituality goes, my worldview is largely based, due to my love of physics and astronomy, in science. So, but I do think there's a grandeur in that view, right? Not only to think that there are probably 19 physical constants that make matter possible at all, but like the biology.
You say so.
Well,
no, kidding.
But like the universe seems so finely tuned to allow matter, right? And then not only that, like just the consequences or the past events that allowed biology to form, and the fact that everyone here, every ancestor we've ever had, has survived to the point where they can reproduce. I mean, that's that gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
But the odds of any of us being here is significantly low. It's a 1 in trillions and trillions and trillions of shot. But to me, that's the kind of stuff that really kind of grounds me in that, I might be worried today about this interview or some resident that yelled at me, but really it's such a minuscule thing in this grand dance that is not only the universe, but life here on Earth. So that plays a big role in my life.
How have your travels, either around the state or outside of the state, influenced the way you view Tempe?
Well, I'll talk about, certainly like my travels, what I was doing in the state. Yeah, so like in the region, something I really like about Tempe And the reason why we call Tempe, it's cliche, but it's only cliche because it's true. It's community of choice. People choose to be here specifically. If you move into the valley, from wherever, from Michigan, a lot of the Phoenix metro area largely looks the same. There's kind of quaint neighborhoods in Phoenix and the original, but like you go to like other cities, other suburbs, and they all look very, very, very similar. Tempe just has a unique look. You find older houses that look like houses in New England. Or you'll find houses that look like they were, in Gilbert. And there's such an eclectic mix that I really appreciate that about the city. I love our sign ordinances, for example, that we don't have billboards on every, drive in other cities and it's billboard, 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 or big gaudy, hot pink buildings for like selling tacos or whatever. I really like that Tempe is so different from everywhere else that I've seen in Arizona thus far. And I think that's why it makes it a community of choice. That's why people make an active decision to be here.
Is there anything else related to your life, your work, other experiences you've had in Tempe that you want to share that I haven't asked you about?
Is this the last question?
No.
Okay. I never thought, I grew up and I had mental health struggles and, familial struggles and things like that, and certainly struggled in my career for a number of years. I never thought I would find a place that I was just home to me. I was always so transient. Even when I lived in Tempe, and I have for a very long time, for almost 20 years, I was always moving every year to a different apartment, different house with a roommate, and I never thought I'd find a community that would embrace me in the way that Tempe has. So I feel very blessed in that it's one of those things that you don't know what you're missing till you have it. So I feel very blessed that the Tempe has embraced me, at least in the last 20 years.
Yeah, and that was my next question was, in what ways do you feel connected to the community? And so maybe to just put a little twist on that, because you answered it so well right then, is what are some things that you enjoy doing when you're not serving on council and you're not working? What are some things in Tempe, either recreational or entertainment? What are things that you like in Tempe?
So I play in a kickball league, which is always very fun. We're actually pretty good this year. So
What's the name of your team?
It's the Pitchforks, the City of Tempe team. So we have many members of council on it, and we were pretty bad 3 years ago. We didn't have it because of COVID for a number of years, but we're actually pretty good this year. I'm excited about that. I bought an inflatable kayak, so I like to go out in the cooler months on Tempe Town Lake. I walk my dog around Kiwanis Park. One of the beautiest things about Tempe is we have so many public amenities, so many parks. There's just always so much to do around. We have all kinds of special events. I'm not going to the Boots or the Boots in the Park Festival. I'm not going to that this weekend because I have to do other things, but I'll certainly be there for Oktoberfest. And I go every year for 4th of July and Indians Festival. I love that Tempe is like a destination for people that want to like do fun things. So I'm very happy to take part in those.
And what kind of dog do you have, and what's the dog's name?
She's a pit bull and chihuahua mix, and her name is Cersei. If you watch Game of Thrones, she's named after the evil queen. So, but if you watch the show, she's very much a Lannister dog. She's got gold fur, gold eyes, and generally kind of is a pain. But I love her very much.
And is there anything that I didn't ask you? This would be the last question,
Okay.
except for we do open it up for other people to ask as well.
Sure.
But is there anything maybe I didn't ask you that you'd like to share?
I mean, I don't really have a question to answer there. I will say, it's been the honor of my life to serve the people of Tempe. And, I would just encourage all Tempeans and all humans to, be kind to each other, be kind to animals, and, be kind to yourself.
Awesome. And so we do like to open it up
Sure.
if anyone else would like to ask a question.
I have two questions that I want to ask. This is Dwayne Rowan asking the question. The first one is, if you were, and you probably do this on a regular basis, talk to a young person, a teenager or even a preteen, and talk about getting involved in their communities and how they should do that. More importantly, why they should do that.
Yeah, I actually do this all the time. And I tell the same stories I kind of alluded to earlier. particularly in this job, right? We're talking politics, but that starts with community involvement and whatever that looks like, right? Like if you want to just do a nonprofit or whatever, there's going to be a lot of people that say you can't do it. There's a lot of people say, well, you know, you got to wait for this, got to wait for that. That's not how the world works. I can't be a mathematician. I just can't. But I can do things outside of that that are satisfying. Be the hardest working person in the room. Don't let anyone tell you they can't do it when they never did it. I've learned that throughout my life. The naysaying is real, or as the kids would say, the haters, they're real. But someone's going to do it, why not you? Whatever that may be. And all you got to do is put in some sweat equity, put in some time, and odds are you'll probably reach your goal.
Thank you. And then the second question, because of some things you said, who's your favorite physicist?
Richard Feynman.
Okay.
Well, I mean, so pure physicist is Richard Feynman, right? I think Carl Sagan's probably my favorite scientist writ large because he was such a great communicator. But Richard Feynman was no slouch himself. He was a fantastic communicator. And you know, years ago, in 2003, I bought all of his lectures at Princeton? No, it wasn't Princeton. It was Berkeley, I think, where he, you know, this is the most famous American physicist that there is, and he's given the introduction to physics at Cal Berkeley. And just to hear the way he talked about it, and the way he describes what science is when he talks about the chessboard and everything like that, to me was really something that inspired me to not only want to like understand how this happens, but to me it was much more of a way of thinking than it was a body of facts.
Thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions? Mikkel?
Hi, Mikkel Keating here. I'm interested in your Navy service and the timing with 9/11. What inspired you to do that, and what did you take away from that, or learn from that, or what was that like?
Yeah, so it was after 9/11,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, obviously it was an emotional time for the country. And at the time, I was going to Lansing Community College, living in my parents' basement. I was a poor student in high school and wasn't looking probably going to be a good student at community college either. So to me, it kind of offered, you know, something to do that I felt a call to. I kind of dabbled in it. My parents have been telling me for years, you should just do this instead, because obviously you're not a very good student. But until then, I didn't feel the emotional need to do so. Something that it taught me, and this was a huge lesson in my life, is that you'd be surprised at what you can do when you have no choice. When you get there the first day, you know, I've been living on, you know, Burger King and soda for, God, a couple of years at least, because I had a job now and I'm buying my own food. You know, and they make you run the 1.5 miles immediately, and, you know, you have people screaming in your face and everything like that. You know, when you can't say no, you can push yourself to unbelievable limits. I had a shipmate in boot camp who was a very large man, you know, and I don't know if because of 9/11 he was allowed to join, but he was certainly over 150 pounds overweight. And to see this guy get through it, right? This guy ran 1.5 miles on his first night that we'd been up all night, and they wake you up and we're doing a PT test. To me, that really spoke to me. And I was actually, you know, my family and my friends, you know, and, you know, I don't blame them for this. They were, you know, kind of taking bets on how long is he going to make it in boot camp, right? And not only did I make it, I was meritoriously promoted. You know, I was the second in charge of my recruit division, and that was something that even myself would never have imagined I could ever do. And to this day, like, I think back on that because there are plenty of times I want to quit and be like, I don't want to do this anymore. Not the city stuff, but just in all of life, right? So it's astounding what one can do when failure is not an option.
Yeah, Debbie.
May I say, you're just so inspirational with your ability. You would reinvent yourself. You go someplace where you couldn't quite imagine yourself, but never say no. And just because someone tells you no doesn't mean that it applies to you. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Something that you said about being able to disagree in a mature way. I look at you as just this young guy that has learned that early, and that skill. I think that that's something that you consciously work at, could you give others of us some pointers as to how we can achieve an ability to be able to represent a different feeling to someone else, but yet still be appropriately respectful?
100%. And I do struggle with it to this day, right? Because look, I think I'm right, and I think I know why I'm right, and I want to communicate to you why you're wrong. but you know what? That's never going to change anyone's mind. I can't tell you how many times someone said something awful about me on Facebook or something, and I just want to get on there and blow them up and tell them, like, this is why you're wrong. Here are the facts. Now you look stupid. I look cool. But that what I have found is I take time to separate myself from whatever disagreement that is, right? Whatever emotional trigger that's upset me to the point where I feel a need to respond, I take some time. I try to give myself a day. And I know that's not always the case, that where you have that opportunity, where if someone, like a public event, someone mad at you about something, and they're being as angry as they can and doing everything they can to elicit a reaction out of you, I will say to that there is so much value in just taking the high road. Like, there's just, don't get down in the muck with people that want to get in the muck with you, because you're only going to get dirty. Just take the high road. Hey, you know what? We agree to disagree. Yeah, you're right. Maybe I am the biggest jerk that's ever walked the earth. I disagree with that respectfully. Have a good night. And that's because you don't want to kick that around forever. It won't make you feel any better. Even if you tell this person how wrong they are and you make them look bad, and that doesn't make you feel any better about it. What makes you feel better about it is any observers and people on the sidelines that say, you handled that pretty well. That I know that must have been hard to do. That's what makes me feel better about high emotion, high conflict situations. So,
thank you for sharing that. I think that's wonderful to learn from you.
Yeah, happy to.
Yeah, we can all learn from that. Thank you so much for your
Thank you for having
time.
me.
Thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for your service to Tempe. And it's been a pleasure to get to know you a little better and hear from you. So thank you so much.
I'm so thrilled to do this. Thank you for inviting me. This has been fantastic. As I said to you earlier off camera, usually my interviews are political or policy related. So anytime you want me to come talk about myself, yeah, I'm happy to do so.
Well, we appreciate it. This is a fun project, and thank you for being part of it.
Appreciate you. Thank you.